So this is my foundation collection. I actually have all of my foundations in here, along with everything that I use as a mixer to get the undertone or the depth right. I have a light medium cool olive undertone, which is just not something that you find almost ever in a foundation line. So I mix my foundation pretty much every day of my life. It is extremely rare for me to find myself in the situation where I don't have to mix my foundation. So I have quite a few mixers in here. I'd like to go through the foundations first though. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all the mixers out of here, and then we'll look at those separately. All right, so these are my foundations. Now a quick note on what I look for in a foundation. I have combo oily skin. However, I live in a climate that is very hot in the summer and very cold and extremely dry during the winter. So I have quite a bit of variance in what I prefer for my skin, kind of what my skin needs depending on the season. Now, I think I discussed this in the intro, but my goal for this declutter is not, I'm not going into this trying to be super cutthroat. I'm not expecting to like cut this by 50%. I think it would be ideal if I could reduce the amount of foundation in here by maybe a third. I think that would be a good goal for me. So let's get started with a couple of things that I know that I would like to declutter. And these are the Beauty Blender Bounce foundations. I actually have two of these. So I was pretty obsessed with this foundation a couple of years ago. I really, really enjoyed it. This is the 2.20 Neutral Olive. This is a good undertone for me. This is a long wearing, more mattifying and more full coverage foundation. I have not used it a ton over the last year. And that's not because it's not a good foundation. It's just because I have something in my collection now that I prefer to this one. For that reason, I think we're going to go ahead and declutter this. I'm pretty sure that it has been repackaged. The packaging was a complaint of a lot of people. I do believe that this foundation exists now in a squeezy tube, if I'm not mistaken. However, when they were changing their packaging, a bunch of these ended up in TJ Maxx. And when I was fully obsessed with this foundation, I saw one pop up in my TJ Maxx and I picked it up because I was so in love with the one that I was using that I wanted a backup. And here it is. Here it is still in the box. So this should probably teach me a lesson about buying backups. I'm going to find another home for this. I have a friend of mine who I think this will be good for. Here's another one. This is the Estee Lauder Futurist Hydra Rescue. This is a really beautiful foundation. It is a little bit more on the hydrating side. It is a little bit more medium coverage. When I first got it and started wearing it, this very strange, like polka dot pore thing was happening on my nose. So just because of how finicky it was trying to get it to work on my nose, I stopped reaching for it. However, earlier this year, I pulled it out again and used it just out of curiosity, and it didn't do the thing. It did not do the thing on my nose. I don't know why. I don't know if my skin has changed, if it was an element of my skincare that wasn't agreeing with this. I don't know, but suddenly it looked beautiful again, and I was so pleased with that, which is why this kind of makes me very sad. Do you see this right here? I don't know what's going on here. There's some separation happening. It kind of did languish in my collection for a while before I discovered that it was usable on me again. So I didn't get near the amount of use out of this that I would have liked to, but I don't know if you can see on camera, if you can see just kind of the white bloom that's happening there. I do think that's just separation, but just given the age of this foundation, yeah, I think it's time to let it go. Okay, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and address these next because they are just, the mirror caps are just blinding. So this is the Physicians Formula Healthy Foundation. I had rolled these into a project at the beginning of the year. I think it was my first round of Deck of Panning, actually. I purchased this one and I enjoyed it so much, but it was a little bit fair for me at the time. It is a good winter shade for me, but I think I purchased this in the summer. And so I went and I enjoyed the way it looked on my skin so much that I thought I would be able to overlook the big con of this product, which is the smell. There is just such a such a strange smell. I can't describe it. If you have this foundation, you know what I'm talking about. It's just an odd smell, and I really find it very unpleasant. Now, I enjoyed the way this looked on my skin so much that I was hoping that I would be able to overlook that. And I wanted a shade that was a little bit deeper for me in the summer. And so I picked this one up. That was foolish. I was never able to get over the smell. So when I first rolled it into the deck of panning, I told you guys that I was probably going to declutter it after I got my uses. And then when I ended up rolling it out, I had decided to keep it because I had found that it's a little bit easier to deal with if I mix it with another one of my more full coverage foundations. That is something that I really like to do. I like to take my lighter coverage and more emollient foundations, and I like to mix them with my more full coverage mattifying foundations just to get the best of both worlds. I love making those little concoctions, and this was a good thing for doing that with. And when diluted, I didn't find the scent as off-putting. However, I think I've reached for it once since this was in that first round of deck of panning at the beginning of the year. And so honestly, yes, I could use this up, but they are a little older, and every time I want to reach for them, I'm like, oh, I'd rather pull something. I would just rather wear something else. So I think I'm going to go ahead and let these go. These are a little bit older than I would feel comfortable passing on to someone else. So I think these are just going to have to go in the bin, which is a little tragic. I spent my hard-earned coin on this, and now I'm going to throw it away. So lessons learned. So let's look at something that I definitely want to keep. This is my Natasha Denona Foundation X. This is probably my favorite full coverage foundation of all time, which is very sad because it has been discontinued. Natasha is no longer making this. I think there's like only 2 shades left on her website, and it's been that way for like a year. If you recall, I had a bottle of this in my empties a few months ago, and it was my only bottle, and I was pretty devastated to have to say goodbye to my favorite full coverage foundation. My husband actually watched that video and went on a hunt and somehow was able to locate another bottle of my shade, and which he gifted to me, which is so sweet, so thoughtful, and I was just thrilled to have this back in my collection. I adore this foundation. Now, it is a more matte full coverage foundation, but it's pretty on the skin. I do have some other foundations that are similar to this. However, with those other foundations, I do feel like I have to be more careful about how I apply them, what I prep with, the amount that I use, etc., to make sure that I don't end up looking a little bit too dry or crusty, but I never do with this foundation. This foundation, it looks nice, and I can sheer it out if I want to. I can wear it full coverage, and I never feel like I end up looking dry or crusty or overly mask-like with this foundation. It is just so pretty on the skin, and I adore it. I'm really hoping Natasha is planning on coming out with something that is just as good as this, or better. I will take better. If she can manage it, I will take better. But yeah, I'm definitely keeping this foundation. I have not yet found anything that I like quite as much as this when it comes to a full coverage foundation. So this is probably my favorite foundation of all time. This is the Dior Backstage. I have it in the shade 2.5N. This is just a fantastic all-around foundation. It is more of a light medium coverage, I would say. It is definitely something that can be worn very sheer across the skin. I can also build it up for a little bit more coverage, but I generally tend not to do that. When I am looking for something that's going to be very natural on the skin and that's going to look like skin, but is also going to last me a long time, this is what I reach for. I just feel like this is just a fabulous all-rounder. Obviously, it's been in my collection for a while. The bottle is starting to peel. I am almost done with this, and I actually thought that I might be able to finish this by the end of the year. However, I have not really been wearing a whole lot of makeup over the last few months, so that is almost certainly not going to happen. However, I'm not all that brokenhearted because I really do love this foundation, and I'm not sad for it to hang around a little bit longer. Just really love this foundation. Will almost certainly repurchase this at some point in the future. It's just such a staple in my collection. Now here is another one. I'm probably going to hang on to this one. I thought I would like this one a little bit more than I do. This is the Giorgio Armani Luminous Silk. I have it in the shade, let's see, 3.5. This is a pretty decent undertone for me, although I do have to adjust the depth a little bit depending on the season. I don't know, with all of the fact that this is such a cult classic foundation and has been for many, many years, I expected to be more impressed by this foundation when I first put it on, and I don't know, I just wasn't. It didn't last nearly as long on my skin as I wanted it to, and it never really blew me away in the way I expected it to, given the amount of hype that has surrounded this product for so many years. I wouldn't put it in my top 3. I don't even know if it would make it to top 5. So I'm going to keep this and I'm going to use it, but it's not going to be a repurchase for me. It's a good foundation. I'm just not blown away by it the way I expected to be. And here is another Armani foundation. Now, one of the things that was a complaint of mine with the Luminous Silk is I felt like this was not nearly as long lasting on me as I wanted it to be. And I have other foundations with similar coverage and finish that I feel like last longer. So that was one of my complaints. And given that, I saw this Power Fabric foundation. This is in the shade 4.5. So this is more of a summer shade for me. This is described as a long wear high cover foundation. So I was kind of hoping that this would be what this wasn't for me, that this would give me a little bit more coverage and last a little bit longer. And yes, it does. It gives me more coverage and it lasts longer. I struggle with this one in all the ways I don't struggle with the Natasha Denona. This one, I have to be very careful with what I prep with. I have to be careful how I apply it, how much I apply. Otherwise, it just ends up looking very dry and crusty on my face. I really struggle to make this work. Now, one way I have found to make it work, and this is probably why I'm going to go ahead and hang on to it, is I have this foundation here. This is the Kojendo Aqua Foundation. This is in the shade, 213. Now, I picked this up back when I had just discovered that I was an olive skin tone. This was a long journey for me, figuring out why I could never find a foundation that matched me. And when I first discovered my olive undertone, this was recommended to me as something with a good undertone. And it really does. The undertone matches me very well. It's just quite a bit too light for me. Even in the wintertime, this is a little bit fair for me. However, I have found that the two of these together are actually quite nice, which is ideal because I struggle with this one on its own, and I also struggle with this one on its own because this is significantly more emollient than I need even in the wintertime when my skin is more normal to dry. It's just a little bit too hydrating for me, and I find that it just vanishes off my skin really, really easily. So the two of these together bring the best of both of these worlds. This one helps the Power Fabric to not be so heavy on my skin, and this one helps this one last quite a bit longer. So if I had either one of these on their own, I probably would let them go. But together, they actually make a pretty decent foundation. So I'm going to hang on to the two of these and try to use them up in tandem. Now here's one I think I need to let go. This is the L'Oreal Infallible 24-Hour Fresh Wear. This is in the shade 425. It has been in my collection probably longer than it should, which is why I'm going to let it go. Not because it's not a good foundation. This is a beautiful foundation. I want to say of all of the foundations that I have tried from the drugstore, this one is probably my favorite. It is just incredibly, it's really well named. It's very fresh looking on the skin. It has a little bit of luminosity to it, but nothing that's going to like really scare me off when my skin is a little bit more on the oily side. It's just really pretty, and it actually lasts quite a long time on me. I was actually surprised when I first wore it how long it lasted on me, despite the fact that it has a little bit more luminosity to it than some of my more matte foundations. And it's just kind of gotten lost in my collection, and it's a little bit on the older side. And so I think it's time to let it go. We are well past the expiration date at this point. And despite the fact that this is really, really a lovely foundation, there are just so many other things in my collection that are also beautiful and that I reach for more often than this one. So this one is going to get decluttered. Now this is the Kevyn Aucoin foundation balm in medium FB 5.5. I have a little bit of an unhealthy obsession with cream makeup. So I'm talking about foundation balms, foundation sticks, that sort of thing. Because when you get it right, they are gorgeous. I have some cream foundations that are some of the most natural, skin-like, comfortable foundations I've ever worn. And then sometimes they just don't work at all. This is actually a pretty decent balm foundation. However, it does have one problem. This is in the shade medium FB 5.5, and this is too fair for me in the summer, and it is too dark for me in the winter. And the fatal flaw of all cream stick balm foundations is that they don't mix easily. And what did I tell you at the beginning of the video? I mix my foundation almost every single day of my life. It is just really hard to mix a balm foundation to adjust the undertone or the depth. And because of that, I haven't gotten nearly as much use out of this that I might have otherwise had it been a better color match. Yeah, it was not a wise purchase. I don't know when I'm going to just learn my lesson about cream foundations and stop trying to make fetch a thing, because I just think it's just not for me. So I think it is time for me to say goodbye to this one. So here is a stick foundation I'm going to keep. This is the Bobbi Brown Skin Foundation Stick. I have this in Cool Ivory 1.25, which is definitely a wintertime shade for me. This is not something I could get away with during the summer at all. Even during the winter, it is a little bit fair for me, but I feel like it has a sheer enough coverage. It's not sheer. It is definitely a lighter medium coverage, I would say, that I'm usually able to get away with it, especially if I have a healthy dose of bronzer. This is one of those foundations where I feel like if you get cream right, it can be gorgeous. And this really, really is gorgeous on the skin. I feel like this just disappears into my skin. I hardly have any left here. Tiny bit left. This is rolled into my 50 Shades of Brown project pan, so I'm hoping to completely finish this by the time that project wraps up. And so I'm going to go ahead and hang on to this one. I will mention this is definitely much more of a winter foundation for me, just because it does have a fair amount of hydration. It is a little bit more emollient. Because of that, not only is it just way too fair for me during the summertime, but in the warmer weather, when my oil production is a little bit more intense, this would just slip right off my skin. So definitely a winter foundation for me. I have two more sticks. Let's just look at those real quick. This one is newer in my collection. It was given to me as a gift by a friend last year. This is the Fenty Beauty, let's see, Eavesdrop Blur and Smooth Tint Stick. I have it in the shade 6, which actually is a little fair for me, but this is more of a light to light medium coverage foundation. So I feel like this is something that's workable. Now, the strengths of this foundation are very much like the strengths of the Bobbi Brown foundation. I really do feel like when I apply this, it disappears into my skin and you cannot see product. This is my skin, but better in a stick. It is not the most long wearing thing on me, especially during the summertime, but for those days where I just want a little something, I don't want necessarily a full face. I just want something to help me feel a little bit more perfected. Love this foundation. It is beautiful. I do think were I to choose between the two of these, I would go for the Fenty. I think the Fenty is even more traceless on the skin than the Bobbi Brown, and I do feel like the Fenty lasts a little bit longer on me than the Bobbi Brown does. Finish wise, I feel like this one is a little bit more of a natural matte than the Bobbi Brown, which has more luminosity to it. So if I was more interested in hydration, I would go for the Bobbi Brown. If I wanted to go for better longevity, I would go for the Fenty. I also have this. This is the By Terry Nude Expert Duo Stick. This is kind of a funny little product because here, I don't know if you can tell, but on one side of the stick is an illuminator and the other side of the stick is the coverage product. I really like the finish on my skin. It's just pretty. And I love how easily it blends in. It takes almost no time at all to apply this. I just really like it. So I'm going to go ahead and hang on to this. I think I picked it up at TJ Maxx for like $6. And now I do feel like over the last year, it has kind of gotten lost in my collection. So I really need to roll it into a project. I really do enjoy this one and I would like to get a little bit more use out of it. Is there anything else I would like to let go of? I think so. I think I can let go both of these. These are AOA Studios foundations. This is from Shop Miss A. This is their Pro Wear foundation. I have it in the shade 374 Pure Beige, and this one is the Satin Buildable Foundation, and the sticker that had the shade on it has come off. So I have no idea what shade this is, but I think it's in the light medium collection. I picked these up kind of on a whim. I was placing an order for Shop Miss A because I really like their beauty sponges. And so that's where I tend to pick them up whenever Shop Miss A is running a like $1 shipping promo, which actually I do fairly often. I will go and pick up more of their little Paw beauty blender dupe situations because they're super cheap and they are lovely. So I think I was putting in an order for that, and I just on a whim grabbed a couple of these, and they're fine. These are perfectly serviceable, perfectly fine foundations. There's nothing wrong with them. I just don't love either of them enough to want to keep it. They're not able to contend with the other foundations that I have in my collection that pretty much on any given opportunity I would reach for over these ones. So I'm going to go ahead and declutter the both of these. So here's one that I was a little bit undecided on. This one actually took me a while to come around to. This is the Flower Beauty Light Illusion Foundation. This is in the shade M3 Classic Tan. I actually picked this up at TJ Maxx for $4.99. And I remember hearing several of the YouTubers that I watch rave about this foundation. So when I saw it in TJ Maxx, $5, I was like, why not? Let's give it a shot. And so I picked it up. However, I think it was during the summer when I first picked this up, and I put it on and I was just not impressed at all. I was not impressed at all. I mean, it was fine. The coverage was fine. It was a medium coverage foundation. The finish was a little bit more luminous than I probably really wanted during the summertime. And it really just did not last on my skin. So for a while, I kind of kept it around simply because I felt bad decluttering it after having used it so few times. I think I only used it maybe twice after picking it up. And so yeah, it just sat in my drawer until recently when I got it out and I tried it again. And now again, I picked this up during the summertime when my skin is quite a bit more oily. I have much more normal skin during the winter, and so when I tried this on fairly recently, I loved it. I loved it. It has just enough coverage, but not too much. It sits really nicely on the skin. The finish on my less oily skin was just about perfect. It was very natural looking, incredibly comfortable. It wore for a decent amount of time on me as well. I think this was a situation where I just picked it up during the wrong season, but I have been really enjoying it now in the cooler months. So I'm going to go ahead and hang on to this one. Here is another foundation that I absolutely love. This is the Soap & Glory Kick-Ass Foundation. This is in the shade, shade 4. This one is a little bit lighter. It's more of a winter shade for me for sure. I remember I picked this up because I saw someone review it online and talk about how gray it was. And if you know anything about, I have very desaturated skin, so that means there's a fair amount of gray, especially during the winter time. In the very depths of summer, I do tend to get a little bit more saturated and a tiny bit warmer, but the rest of the year, I have a fair amount of gray in my skin tone. And so when I hear the words, oh, it's gray, I immediately am interested. And I picked this one up. I actually picked up 2 bottles of this. I picked up shade 06 and shade 04. 06 is a little bit better for me in the summertime. I completely finished that bottle of 06 and loved every last drop of it. Loved it. This has great coverage. It's incredibly comfortable. It is very long wearing on my skin, even during the summertime. And the best of all is I don't have to mix this one. This is one of the very few foundations I've ever come across that the undertone and the saturation match me so well that I don't feel like I need to mix it at all. Now, I should have used this up already. It's getting a little older in my collection, and I really should have used this up already, but I think I was hesitant to completely pan this because I can't get this any longer. Soap & Glory no longer makes these foundations, and it is so unique in my collection, and it is such a pleasure to wear it that I was really hesitant to finish it. However, foundation does not last forever. I really, really do need to finish up this foundation. I am not super fussed about expiration dates on my makeup. Generally speaking, if it smells good, if it performs well, and it hasn't changed color or there's no weirdness into the consistency, I will probably hang on to it. So this one, I'm still comfortable putting this one on my skin, and I really do need to finish it because I love this foundation. Here is another foundation. I don't really feel like this was worth the money I spent on it. I have to be honest. So this is the Dior Forever. I picked it up about the same time that I picked up the Face and Body. This is their more matte full coverage foundation. This is transfer proof, 24-hour foundation, high perfection, blah, 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 blah. I have it in the shade 2.5N. This is actually a perfectly fine foundation. I don't have any major complaints about it. My only complaint really about this foundation is that this one's better. I feel like these two foundations do the same thing for me as far as coverage and staying power and finish, except for this one just does it better in every possible way. The Dior, I just have to be a lot more careful about my prep and how I apply it and how much I apply it, because if you go overboard with this one, it will look heavy. It does last quite a long time on my skin. It has excellent coverage. It just isn't as pretty in its full coverage nature as the Natasha Denona is. So whenever I'm looking for something that's going to be more matte and more full coverage and more long wearing, I'm always going to pick for this one over this one. Just always. I'm always going to choose this one over this one. That said, I don't dislike the foundation. I feel like I have to finesse it a little bit more in order to make it perfect for me. It sounds like I should declutter this one, right? But I can't do it. I spent an arm and a leg on it. I mean, it's Dior. Who did I think I was picking up 2 Dior foundations? What's wrong with me? Anyway, this is just too dear. I can't let go of it because it was just too expensive. So I would like to use this one up, which means I really need to make more of a concerted effort to use this one. I need to roll this into a project pan or something and use it up. I am determined. I'm determined to get my money's worth out of it. So on the more light coverage side, this is the Stila Hide and Chic Fluid Foundation. This is in the shade Light Medium 3. This is actually my second bottle of this. I have gone through an entire bottle of this one that was a shade deeper. This is more of a light medium to medium coverage foundation. I think it is slightly buildable, but I never do build it up because that's not really what I'm looking for when I grab this foundation. Now, this foundation is something that I really enjoy wearing during the summertime, despite the fact that I definitely get very glowy when I'm wearing this one. It does nothing to control my oil. However, I don't know how to explain it. It's a pretty dewy. It's not a sweaty, greasy, nasty looking dewy. It just looks pretty. The other upside to this one is it actually stays quite well on my skin. It doesn't separate on me or break up or start to look heavy. I have other foundations that are more luminous and lightweight like this one that will just disappear off of my skin so fast during the summertime, but this one does not. It sticks around and just looks pretty. Even when I start looking super shiny, it's still nice. And so yeah, I am definitely hanging on to this one. Another more hydrating foundation. This is the Urban Decay Hydromaniac Tinted Glow Hydrator. Now, I picked this up last winter. I think it was during a Black Friday sale, actually. This is in the shade 41 Light Medium. And I picked this one up last winter when my skin was having an absolute fit. I had just moved to a place that was quite a bit drier than what I was accustomed to. And last winter, my skin just lost it. Just lost it. It was awful. I was peeling. I had never experienced anything like that before. So I picked this up specifically because it said Hydromaniac. I was hoping that would do something for me. And I actually really quite like this. This is definitely more of a wintertime foundation for me, but it is a really very pretty foundation. It's very natural looking. It has a very fresh, healthy glow to it. And it is very forgiving when my skin is a little bit drier. I really do enjoy this one. It's a little bit more new in my collection. So I am definitely going to be hanging on to this one. Now this one I'm not sure about. This is the Urban Decay Stay Naked Weightless Liquid Foundation. I have it in the shade 30CG, which is a good undertone for me, although it is a little bit fair for me for most of the year. To be honest, it has been long enough since I used this. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I can't remember how I felt about this. I mean, obviously it wasn't all that memorable. But yeah, I think I would like to use it a few more times before I make up my mind about whether or not this really has a place in my collection. So I'm going to go ahead and hang on to that. This is another foundation that I picked up last winter when my skin was having its absolute freak out. And I was trying to find something that would sit nicely on my ridiculously dry skin. And so this is the Catrice True Skin Hydrating Foundation, and this is in the shade 44 Cool Chai. This is a very hydrating foundation. I feel like it has more coverage than the Hydromaniac, and it is a little bit more long wearing than the Hydromaniac is for me, but it is very comfortable on the skin. It has a very pretty finish. Really do like it. So we're going to hang on to that one too. I'm not sure about this one. This is the Sephora Best Skin Ever foundation, and it's a good foundation. It's a good foundation. I just don't know that it fills a gap in my collection. This is more of a natural matte foundation. It has a good medium coverage to it. It looks quite natural. This is the shade 20N. I like this foundation. I just don't know that I need it. It's just not something that I'm reaching for, because again, if I want this type of foundation, I'm reaching for my backstage. So I don't know that this is something that I really need to keep in my collection. It has been a while since I reached for it. It is starting to get to be a little bit on the older side. I think I'm going to go ahead and let this one go. Okay, we are almost there. I've got 3 left. Now this is something that I don't know about this one. This is the Estee Lauder Double Wear. This is in the shade 2C3. I picked this up at TJ Maxx because, like the Giorgio Armani, I have heard so many people just rave about the Double Wear for so many years, and I wanted to see what all the fuss was about. And I gotta tell you, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what all the fuss was about. I don't know that this was a terribly impressive foundation. However, I've only used this a couple of times. I'd really like to use it a few more times before I decide whether or not to keep it. So I'm going to go ahead and hang on to this one for now. This is one of the newer foundations in my collection. I picked this up this last spring. This is the Beauty Blender Bounce Skin Tint. And the reason why I wanted to try this one so badly was because this is the shade Medium 3, which is described as a cool olive. And I can't tell you how rare that is. I almost never see sometimes you will see an olive undertone, but I almost never see a cool olive undertone. So I picked this up, and wouldn't you know, this was an almost flawless match for my skin tone. It's the most uncanny thing. Now, I think it's helpful that this is not a full coverage foundation. Lower coverage foundations will give you a little bit more flexibility when it comes to the shade match, but the undertone was just spot on, and I just find that such a novel experience. This is actually a pretty radiant foundation, so it is not a depths of summer foundation for me, but it is really, really pretty on the skin. It looks very natural. It's incredibly comfortable. And I love the fact that I do not have to mix it. I think in the very depths of winter, it's a little bit on the dark side for me. But because it is more of a light coverage foundation, I do feel like it's a little bit more flexible. And so I can get away with it for more of the year than I would be able to if this was a more full coverage foundation. Really have been enjoying this one, and I'm going to hang on to it. All right, last, this is my Salt New York Magnetic Palette, and in here I have my Salt New York Sneaky Balm. I have several other things in here too, obviously, but this is my Sneaky Balm. This is in the shade N10. Now, earlier I was talking about the strengths of a balm or cream based product. And one of those is when you get it right, they are invisible. And this is quite possibly the most invisible base product or coverage product I have ever experienced in my life. Now, it is also a sheer to light coverage. So you're not going to get a ton of coverage out of this, but it is just subtly perfecting in a way that you don't have to wear anything else with this. You know how sometimes if you put a base product on, then you kind of feel like you need to add some other things to it in order to balance the contrast of your face. That's not necessary with this one. This one, I feel like this one is even more invisible than the Fenty, and that's really saying something. The Fenty is a little bit more of a natural matte. The Sneaky Balm is much more radiant. It gives you just a beautiful glow. This is the sort of thing that I don't mind wearing summertime or wintertime. Obviously during the summer, it's not nearly as long wearing, but when I just want a little something, I don't want to wear a full face of makeup. I just want my skin to look like it's just a little nicer than it actually is. This is what I reach for. It's a really lovely product. You can tell I'm almost done with it. I have this rolled into a project, and yeah, it's not long for this world. I think I will be able to finish this up pretty quickly. So those are my foundations. Let's see how many I'm keeping. Okay, so that's 18, including the Sneaky Balm. That's 18 foundations that I am keeping. And I am decluttering 10. I'm decluttering 10 foundations. I'm going down from 28 to 18. So actually a little bit more than a third. That's actually better than I expected. I don't think I'm going to regret letting any of these go. And that allows me to focus a little bit better on the things that I just really, really do love. So yeah, I am happy with that. All right. These are my foundation mixers. These are a variety of actual mixers, some foundations, and actually one lipstick that I use to adjust my foundation to match me in undertone or depth. Some of my foundations match me in undertone, but not in depth, and vice versa. This helps me correct that problem. Now, these blue mixers are probably the most important part of my mixer collection here, and that is because in order to desaturate, cool down, and add a little bit of green to most foundations, what I need is a blue mixer. Now, it doesn't work as well for me on foundations that are very yellow. I try to stay clear of anything that's very yellow. I have a cool olive undertone. So in order to correct for the warmth, it's a little bit more complicated than having to just correct by adding a little bit of green and desaturating, which blue will do on its own. So there was one item that I could not locate before sitting down, but I have no intention of decluttering it. And so I will just put up a photo here and we'll talk about it. This is my Temp 2 blue mixer. It is this tiny little squeezy bottle. It is my favorite blue mixer. Temp 2 is a airbrush makeup company. This is the best blue mixer I have ever found. It does not alter the finish of the foundation in any way. It is very lightweight, easily mixes with all of my foundations. It doesn't require a ton of product, but I also don't find myself in the position where I'm overdoing it and then ending up with something that's too green. It's beautiful. I love it. It's my favorite. I will not be decluttering it, and I will absolutely be repurchasing it when it runs out. So let's talk about some of these other ones. First, we'll tackle the rest of my blue mixers. This is my LA Girl Pro Color Foundation Mixing Pigment. I have gone through several bottles of this. This was my go-to blue mixer before I discovered the Temp 2. And it's a little bit more accessible than the Temp 2 is. I can only get the Temp 2 online, but I can still find the LA Girl in store sometimes. I do feel like this one does slightly mattify my glowier foundations. So this does affect the finish of my foundations a little bit more than Temp 2 does. But it's still a really, really nice product. I will definitely be using this up. Still really, really do like it. I've just found something that I like a little bit better. Now, this is my other blue mixer, and this one I don't like nearly as much. This is the AOA Studio Shade Adjusting Drops. I actually have two of these. I have one in blue and one in black. There are some instances where I need to reduce the saturation of a foundation. In other words, it's a little bit too vibrant and I need a little bit more gray involved. And that's why I picked up the black color here, because I thought that would be useful for that particular situation. And in theory, it would be, but there is a problem with both of these, and that is that they are just too pigmented. It is really, really difficult to get the right amount of product out of these without going overboard. I don't think I'm going to declutter this one. I'm going to keep using it. It is a good shade of blue. It is just a little trickier to use than the LA Girl or the Temp 2. So this is not my favorite. I will not be repurchasing it, but I do want to go ahead and use it up. This one, however, I have yet to be able to get a small enough amount of product to do what I want it to do. So I'm going to go ahead and declutter this one. Okay, so here is my other LA Girl foundation mixing pigment. This is the white mixer, and this one is very handy for lightening up foundations that are a little too deep for me. So if I have a foundation that's more in my summer shade and I want to wear it when I'm more fair, this is very helpful to me. So I am happy with this one, and I'm going to hang on to it. All right, these two. These are the L'Oreal Infallible Pro Glow foundations. This is in the shade 201. This is in the shade 209. I use this to lighten and this to deepen. I really do like the very healthy, slightly glowy finish of this foundation. It's a really, really nice foundation. However, these are really getting long in the tooth. I actually think this one's from 2019. 2019. So I'm going to go ahead and declutter both of these. This one is actually a little Franken that I have mixed up. It looks so gross in the tube. This is a little squeezy pump, and it has gotten all over the inside of the cap. I think I put some of my Dior Backstage in here and mixed it with a number of other things, actually including this black mixer, to create my own adjuster. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and hang on to this. As grody as it looks, it is still useful to me. This is the Sephora So Clean Glowing Skin Foundation. This is in the shade 39. It is obviously much too deep for me, so I use this for darkening up foundations that are too light. It has a pretty light coverage to it, and so I don't find that it's overly pigmented, but my favorite thing about this is that it has a slightly cool undertone. A lot of times when you are going for deeper shades, they will become very, very warm, and this is one of the only foundations that I have found of this depth that does not pull warm. I think I picked this up last winter. I was traveling. The foundation that I had with me was a little too light, and I realized I had not brought anything to mix into it. I don't think Sephora makes this anymore, but honestly, I think it's gonna be quite a while before I would need to repurchase something to fill this gap. Okay, so this is my keep pile, and this is my declutter pile. This is something that I'm going to declutter, which is a little sad because it is fairly new in my collection. This is the Juvia's Place I Am Magic Velvety Matte Foundation. It's in the shade 330 Ochre, and I picked this up online, and I should not have. I should not have. I picked it up because it was described as a neutral, I think it was neutral or cool. And it is neither of those things. That is just, it's so warm. It is so warm on my skin tone. And because of that, it just messes up anything that I mix into it. I should have returned it immediately. I just foolishly thought that I could make it work. If I do have a foundation that ends up a little bit too warm for me, I can mix a little bit of red into it along with the blue to cool it off and bring it more towards my skin tone. If I just mix the blue into something that's too warm for me, I end up with a very warm green, and I need a cool green, and the addition of the red really helps me get it right. Unfortunately, it's so finicky. It is so finicky trying to get just the right amount of red, because I just need a tiny bit of rosiness in there. And it's just not worth my time. It's not worth my time. So for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and declutter both of these. I picked this one up when I had more warm foundations in my collection because I had not yet learned that I really needed to stay away from the warmer foundations. I have since decluttered all of my very warm foundations, and so I don't really have a lot of use for this except to correct this. And to have a corrector to correct a corrector. Come on. Ain't nobody got time for that. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and declutter the both of those. So what do we have? Just imagine that the Temp 2 is right here. So that is 6. I'm going to keep 6 mixers, and I am letting go of 5 mixers. So that's almost a 50% drop in this category. And that is it. My foundation drawer is going to be a lot less cluttered after this. So I am pleased. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I will be back at you with some more decluttering goodness. So I hope I will see you in the next one. Bye.